Picture this, a treasure so vast it could make a king blush, loaded onto a ship under the cloak of night, only to vanish without a trace. This isn't a movie plot, it's the true story of the lost treasure of Lima, one of history's most epic and frustrating mysteries. So, let's set the scene. It's 1820 in Lima, Peru. The winds of revolution are blowing hard across South America. The Spanish viceroy, fearing the approaching rebel army led by the legendary José de San Martín, makes a desperate decision. He needs to move the city's immense wealth to safety in Mexico until the rebellion is crushed. We are talking about a staggering fortune accumulated over centuries. Imagine life-sized solid gold statues, chests overflowing with jewels, silver bars stacked like firewood, and hundreds of thousands of gold coins. Historians estimate its modern value could be anywhere from a few hundred million to over $1 billion. It was, without a doubt, one of the greatest collections of treasure ever assembled. The viceroy needed a ship, and fast. He found a British merchant captain named William Thompson and his ship, the Mary Dear. Thompson was known as a reliable seaman, an honest trader. The Spanish officials struck a deal with him: transport this priceless cargo to Mexico for a handsome fee. To ensure everything went smoothly, they placed armed Spanish guards on board. The treasure was secretly loaded, crate by crate, under the cover of darkness. The plan seemed solid. What could possibly go wrong? Well, this is where Captain Thompson's character takes a dramatic turn. As the Mary Dear sailed out into the Pacific, far from the prying eyes of the Spanish authorities, temptation began to whisper. Day after day, Thompson and his crew sailed with a king's ransom right under their feet. The thought of all that gold, all that power, was too much to bear. The line between honest sailor and pirate began to blur. One fateful night, the plan was set in motion. Thompson and his crew turned on the Spanish guards. In a swift, brutal takeover, they eliminated every single one of them, along with the priests who were accompanying the treasure. With the guardians of the wealth now at the bottom of the ocean, the Mary Dear and its billion-dollar cargo belonged to them. Captain Thompson was no longer a merchant. He was the captain of a pirate crew sitting on an unimaginable fortune. But here's the problem with stealing a mountain of gold. You see and just sail into the nearest port and start spending. News of the theft would travel fast. Thompson needed a place to hide the treasure, a place so remote no one would ever think to look. He set a course for a tiny, uninhabited dot in the vast Pacific Ocean, Cocos Island, located about 350 miles off the coast of Costa Rica. Today, Cocos Island is a lush, jungle-covered national park, a diver's paradise teeming with sharks. But back then, it was the perfect pirate hideout, a maze of dense rainforests, waterfalls, and hidden coves. Upon arriving, Thompson and his men allegedly hauled the treasure ashore, deep into the island's interior. They dug a massive pit, buried the chests of gold and jewels, and carefully covered their tracks, marking the spot in a way only they would understand. Their plan was to lie low, let the heat die down, and then return later to retrieve their ill-gotten gains, one small piece at a time. But fate, as it often does in these stories, had other plans. Soon after leaving Cocos Island, the Mary Dear was captured by a Spanish warship. The game was up. The crew was rounded up and put on trial for piracy. Most of them were swiftly executed. But Captain Thompson and his first mate, a man named James Alexander Forbes, were spared. Why? Because they were the only two people alive who knew the location of the buried treasure. The Spanish offered them a deal: lead us to the treasure, and we'll spare your lives. Thompson and Forbes agreed. They guided the Spanish ship back to Cocos Island. But as they approached the familiar coastline, the two pirates saw their chance. Under the pretense of showing the Spaniards the way through the thick jungle, they bolted. They vanished into the dense, unforgiving wilderness they knew so well. The Spanish soldiers searched for days, but the island was a green labyrinth. Thompson and Forbes had disappeared as completely as the treasure itself. The Spanish eventually gave up and sailed away, empty-handed. What happened to Captain Thompson is a mystery. He was never seen or heard from again. He may have perished on the island or somehow escaped. But his first mate, Forbes, was eventually rescued by a passing whaling ship. He made his way to Canada, where he lived the rest of his life, apparently never returning to Cocos Island. But the story doesn't end there. On his deathbed, Forbes allegedly drew a crude map and gave it to a friend named John Keating, revealing the secret of the treasure of Lima. And so began the legend. Over the next 2 centuries, the story of the lost treasure spread like wildfire, attracting adventurers, dreamers, and fortune hunters from all over the world. Armed with copies of Forbes's map, or their own theories. Hundreds of expeditions have descended upon Cocos Island. They've brought everything from simple shovels to sophisticated metal detectors and ground-penetrating radar. People have spent their life savings, dedicated decades of their lives, and braved the island's treacherous terrain, all chasing the ghost of Captain Thompson's gold. One of the most famous treasure hunters was a German adventurer named August Gissler. He was so obsessed with the treasure that he lived on Cocos Island for nearly 20 years, from 1889 to 1908. He even became the official governor of the island. He and his wife systematically dug hundreds of tunnels and pits, turning parts of the island into a Swiss cheese of failed attempts. He found a handful of old Spanish coins, but the main hoard, the billion-dollar prize, remained elusive. He left the island a broke and broken man. So, the billion-dollar question remains, is the treasure still there? Is it even real? Skeptics argue that the story is just a tall tale, an embellished sailor's yarn that grew into a legend over time. They point out that there are no official Spanish records of this massive treasure being lost, which is a pretty big hole in the story. They suggest the few coins found on the island could have been left by any number of pirates or sailors who used it as a stopover. But the believers, the romantics, are not so easily deterred. They argue that the Spanish government would have been deeply embarrassed to admit losing such a fortune, especially to a lone merchant captain. They believe the treasure is still there, hidden in a sea cave that's only accessible at low tide, or buried so deep that modern technology still can't find it. They hold on to the deathbed confession of the first mate and the tantalizing clues left behind. Today, the Costa Rican government has banned all treasure hunting on Cocos Island to protect its fragile ecosystem. The era of digging is over. So, if the treasure of Lima is there, it's likely to stay there, protected by the jungle, the law, and the passage of time. It's a story that has everything: betrayal, pirates, a lost map, and a billion-dollar mystery. Whether it's a historical fact or a masterful piece of fiction, the legend of the lost treasure of Lima continues to capture our imagination, reminding us that sometimes the greatest treasures are the stories themselves. What do you think? Is there a mountain of gold waiting on that remote island? Or is it just a fantastic pirate tale? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you love a good mystery, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next adventure into the unknown. See you next time.